The moment Elijah and Emmanuel Reed walked through the gates of Harrison West Academy, they understood their journey wouldn't be simple. This prestigious, predominantly white private institution tucked away in Connecticut's affluent landscape would test them in ways they hadn't imagined. What awaited them behind those immaculate entrance doors was a systematic campaign led by Cole Harrington and his followers, a relentless effort to diminish their spirits through constant harassment, deliberate humiliation, and racist attacks, designed to make them feel unwelcome and powerless. However, these bullies had severely underestimated their targets. What they failed to recognize was that both brothers possessed black belt training, having been mentored since early childhood by a father who instilled in them the principles of standing firm against hatred while never allowing rage to compromise their character. The tormentors saw two quiet students from a working-class background and assumed vulnerability. Their assumption couldn't have been further from reality. Before we continue with this incredible story, let us know in the comments which part of the world you're tuning in from. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. Tomorrow's episode will be absolutely unmissable. The final days of September painted Fairfield County, Connecticut, in the lingering warmth of summer, though cool breezes hinted at autumn's approach. Fallen leaves scattered across Harrison West Academy's perfectly maintained grounds. This historic preparatory institution positioned between the prestigious communities of Wilton and New Canaan. The campus buildings rose like monuments to tradition. Red brick construction, ornate iron balconies, and ivy climbing their walls like living symbols of heritage. Elijah and Emmanuel Reed entered through the main entrance with purposeful steps. Though identical in their measured gait, composed bearing, and unwavering resolve, the twin brothers wore the standard navy blazers and khaki pants like their peers, yet everything about their presence stood apart. Their rich bronze complexion, precisely trimmed hair, and alert, observant eyes marked them as different. They originated from New Haven, from streets where dignity was something you demonstrated, not something passed down through generations. At Harrison West, they represented more than new students. They embodied proof that excellence wasn't exclusive to inherited wealth. Conversations stopped mid-sentence and stares followed their path from the instant their shoes touched the historic stone pathway. "You sensing that?" Emmanuel whispered. Elijah offered the slightest acknowledgement, like we're trespassing. Their father, Jerome Reed, had prepared them for this reality. A former military drill sergeant turned youth counselor, he never sugar-coated difficult truths. He delivered honesty with unwavering directness. His preparation encompassed mental, emotional, and physical training for exactly these circumstances. Before they could master bicycle riding, he had them reciting the principles of discipline, dignity, and measured distance. Later, when they reached appropriate age, he introduced martial arts training, not to promote aggression, but to cultivate inner balance and the ability to maintain composure when external forces sought to destabilize them. Near the school's entrance steps, a voice called out mockingly, "Well, look what we have here. Harrison West now offers matching sets." The twins glanced toward the sound. 3 students lounged against the towering limestone columns, all wearing identical smirks. Cole Harrington commanded attention immediately. Perfectly styled blonde hair, his blazer worn casually unbuttoned, as if rules didn't apply to him, and that confident grin of someone who believed the world existed for his convenience. His companions, Sawyer and Declan, showed less self-assurance, but equal malice, laughing as if competing for his approval. "A 2-for-1 deal. That's the new scholarship program," Cole continued. Emmanuel kept his gaze forward. Elijah maintained his stride without hesitation. Cole let out a sharp whistle. "Those blazers look pretty snug, gentlemen. Did the thrift store run out of your sizes?" Emmanuel's hand clenched briefly at his side. Elijah controlled his breathing, his father's guidance echoing in his mind. "They'll target your pride. Allow it. Pride without self-control becomes weakness." The polished marble floors reflected their images as they navigated past trophy displays and oil paintings. The institution hummed with quiet activity, Latin inscriptions carved into archways, evidence of generational wealth throughout. Yet beneath all this tradition lay something empty in the attention that followed them. During their initial class, the instructor called attendance without raising his head. Read. Read, he mumbled, already moving forward. Between periods, students created narrow pathways for them to pass. Some deliberately brushed their shoulders. Others acted oblivious when blocking access to lockers. Every encounter delivered the same underlying message. You don't truly belong here. The cruelest aspect wasn't the direct confrontations. It was the pervasive silence. Educators looked past them. Fellow students observed but remained mute. Social hierarchy here wasn't enforced through physical violence. It was maintained through dismissive expressions and deliberate exclusion. Cole soon escalated his tactics. One afternoon, as the brothers accessed their lockers, he approached with that familiar smirk that always preceded something vicious. "I didn't realize the groundskeeping staff was enrolling students this year," he announced. Sawyer chuckled. "Must be some new diversity initiative, teaching the maintenance crew Latin conjugation." Emmanuel stared into his locker, fists tight, enough to register the tension. Elijah remained motionless. Cole moved closer. "Listen, I'm genuinely trying to help you guys adapt. You'll need much more than coordinated footwear." The twins maintained their silence. They gathered their textbooks and departed. That evening during dinner, their father observed them carefully. He noticed the tension in their jawlines, the way they attacked their mashed potatoes as if avoiding conversation. "You boys managing? Okay," Jerome inquired with steady tone. "We're fine," Elijah responded too quickly. "Fine's just a word," Jerome replied, "but not always the accurate one. Talk to me when it becomes something different." They sat in momentary silence. Then he added, "You remember our agreement?" "Self-control equals strength," Emmanuel said, barely audibly. Jerome nodded. "They'll attempt to erode your composure. Don't permit it. But should they ever cross that boundary, and you'll recognize when they do, ensure that when you take your stand, you do it correctly. No fury, no second-guessing, just accuracy." The following morning, that boundary was waiting for them. The corridor carried the scent of disinfectant mixed with tension. Students had congregated, murmuring and laughing, phones ready. The twins approached their lockers and froze. Their locker doors were covered in red spray paint. Racial slurs, crude drawings, phrases like "return to where you belong" splattered across the metal surfaces. Stick figure caricatures with exaggerated features. Paper notices taped up reading 2-for-1 special, custodial edition. Laughter swelled like a tide. Someone whistled approval. Another person recorded everything. Cole leaned against the nearby wall, arms folded, grinning like someone who had just performed an impressive trick. "Good morning, gentlemen," he said. "We thought this place could use some personality." Sawyer laughed. "Red really suits you both." The atmosphere around them became still. The crowd anticipated tears, rage, anything. Elijah approached Mr. Ellis, the janitor, a silver-haired man with compassionate eyes, and asked, "Could we get cleaning supplies for this?" The elderly man provided paper towels without comment. As apetiasi, they cleaned their lockers. The laughter died down. Cole's grin dimmed slightly. "That's enough," Elijah said quietly. Emmanuel agreed with a nod. No more. They hadn't raised their voices or thrown punches, but something had shifted. The brothers had reached their threshold, and beyond that point lay a storm Harrison West wasn't equipped to handle, because hidden beneath those uniforms and calm exteriors were two trained fighters, not prepared to initiate conflicts, but to conclude them with the type of precision not taught in preparatory schools. And intuition suggested the conclusion wasn't distant. The locker paint had been removed, but its memory remained fresh. Throughout that week, Harrison West operated with unusual energy. Some students regarded Elijah and Emmanuel with mixed admiration and anxiety, as if anticipating an eruption that hadn't yet occurred. Others maintained distance, whispering behind, covered mouths, or avoiding eye contact. Cole Harrington and his group, however, behaved as if nothing had transpired. If anything, they seemed encouraged, moving through hallways with that same careless confidence, as if challenging someone to confront them. But the twins had entered a different state, not fearful, but concentrated. They carried themselves like distant thunderstorms, outwardly calm, but prepared to unleash power when conditions aligned. Cole didn't wait long to test those conditions. On Thursday morning, just before first period, the twins crossed the main courtyard when familiar mocking laughter echoed behind them. Cole's voice projected theatrically, "Hey guys, hold up. Just wanted to ensure you knew today's cafeteria, special features, collard greens, and watermelon." Sawyer and Declan's laughter followed like a poor echo. Emmanuel paused briefly, his hand forming a fist before relaxing with a controlled exhale. Elijah positioned himself slightly ahead, shoulders squared, voice level. "You find that amusing?" Cole raised an eyebrow with a casual shrug. "Just attempting to brighten the atmosphere. You two always appear so intense." Elijah's gaze remained fixed. "Perhaps we simply don't find humor in things that aren't genuinely funny." Cole smirked but didn't respond. He didn't need to. His audience had already assembled, students lingering near benches pretending to adjust shoes or check devices, all watching. Later that day, the situation intensified. During physical education, the coach assigned everyone to indoor track conditioning laps. The twins had completed their fourth lap when Declan deliberately collided with Emmanuel's legs, sending him down hard. Before he could rise, Sawyer muttered, "Careful there. Wouldn't want to injure our star scholarship recipients." Seconds later, Elijah was helping his brother up silently. Coach Sanders glanced over from his clipboard but said nothing. No warning, no consequence, just another page turned in the book of permitted cruelty. That evening over dinner, Jerome didn't need to ask questions. He recognized that his sons spoke little, but the weight in their expressions communicated more than any complaint. After extended silence, Elijah finally spoke. "They won't stop, Dad. Each day brings worse treatment and nobody intervenes." Jerome set down his utensil and leaned back, his expression unreadable. "And your response?" "We've maintained our position like you taught us." Emmanuel's voice was quiet but determined. "But they crossed boundaries days ago. We just haven't reacted yet." Jerome studied both boys for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Then you already understand what must happen. When that moment arrives, don't create drama. Make a statement. They won't forget." The next morning arrived cool and crisp. Tension filled the air, as if even wildlife had chosen silence. Elijah and Emmanuel moved through the courtyard like focused shadows, steady and prepared. They sensed the final provocation approaching, and it arrived sooner than anticipated. Just before lunch, they returned to find their lockers defaced again. This time, not spray paint, but something worse. Polaroid photographs taped across the doors, digitally altered with racial slurs and mocking captions. One read, "Tomorrow's Janitors of America." Another showed their faces superimposed on prison, booking photos. Students gathered quickly, laughing, whispering, recording videos as if witnessing just another school prank. Cole stood nearby, arms crossed, smugger than ever. "We figured we'd contribute to your yearbook photos," he announced loudly, tauntingly. Elijah and Emmanuel examined the photographs, the laughter, the crowd, then each other. No words were exchanged. None were necessary. The decision had already been made. As the hallway buzzed with tension and amusement, Emmanuel faced Cole directly. "Remove it," he said, his voice calm but edged with steel. Cole chuckled. "Or what exactly?" Elijah stepped beside his brother, eyes locked on Cole. "Do you really want to discover that?" Cole laughed, but hesitation now showed in his eyes, the kind that appears when someone realizes they may have pushed too far. He reached out and shoved Elijah's shoulder. "Why don't you two accept reality and return to wherever you originated?" In one fluid motion, Elijah caught his wrist and applied pressure, not enough to cause injury, but sufficient to make Cole gasp. In the next instant, Emmanuel swept behind Sawyer's leg and sent him sprawling across the polished floor, textbooks and laughter falling silent together. Declan lunged forward, but Elijah sidestepped and delivered a precise shoulder strike to his chest, sending him tumbling backward into a row of lockers. The hallway erupted, not in laughter but in stunned silence. Phones continued recording, but not for entertainment. This represented something different. This was long-delayed justice. Security arrived within minutes, but by then Cole sat on the floor clutching his wrist, Sawyer groaning, and Declan blinking in disbelief. The twins stood tall, back straight, breathing controlled. When questioned, Elijah simply stated, "We defended ourselves, nothing more." That afternoon they were summoned to the headmaster's office. Mr. Wallace, a gray-haired man with a Harvard class ring and an uncomfortable smile, sat across from them, flanked by 2 assistant deans. "We're implementing temporary suspension while we investigate," he said, avoiding their eyes. "This follows standard protocol." Elijah asked one question. "Did you suspend them when they spray-painted our lockers? Or," Emmanuel added, "when they knocked me down? When they called us everything except our actual names?" Mr. Wallace shifted uncomfortably. "That remains under review." "Convenient," Jerome said, entering the room. He had arrived without announcement, but his presence dominated the space. He walked calmly to stand behind his sons, hands folded before him. "So we're punishing the reaction, not the cause." Mr. Wallace cleared his throat. "Mr. Reed, we're simply following institutional guidelines." Jerome's voice remained calm, slow, surgical. "And I'll be following mine, beginning with filing formal grievances, contacting the school board, and releasing hallway footage which, I understand, will corroborate statements from several students who are finished remaining silent." The meeting concluded in controlled chaos. The twins departed, not defeated, but resolved. They hadn't lost anything. They had established boundaries, and now Harrison West would have to answer for them. That evening, back home, the Reeds sat around their kitchen table in silence that wasn't heavy, but full of understanding, full of clarity, full of the quiet strength that comes from standing tall when others expect you to crumble. Elijah looked at his brother. "They assumed we'd break." Emmanuel nodded. "They were mistaken." Jerome placed firm hands on their shoulders. "This isn't finished, but you demonstrated your position clearly." By Monday morning, the video had circulated widely. What began as hallway whispers became social media waves. Then something Harrison West Academy couldn't ignore. Clips from the altercation, captured from multiple student phones, spread through Instagram and TikTok with captions like, "They deserved it," and, "Finally someone confronted Cole." The footage revealed everything clearly. Elijah and Emmanuel didn't initiate the conflict, but they concluded it with calm, practiced force that amazed everyone watching. They didn't scream, didn't celebrate, didn't flail like angry children. They moved with precision, balance, discipline, as if designed for exactly such moments. And in truth, they were. For the first time, the story began changing direction. Students who had remained silent started speaking out. A sophomore named Maya posted on the school's internal forum describing how she'd witnessed weeks of harassment while teachers ignored obvious signs. Her post received over 200 supportive comments. Others followed suit. A debate team member recounted how Cole once erased Elijah's name from a sign-up sheet and laughed publicly. An AP biology student admitted witnessing Declan push Emmanuel into a locker 2 days before the fight. The protective silence around the bullies began crumbling with each testimony. At home, Elijah and Emmanuel sat at their kitchen table, surrounded by supportive statements and copies of the school's conduct code that Jerome had printed and highlighted in red. Their father, never one for theatrical gestures, approached the situation with military precision. He had already contacted the local NAACP chapter, filed formal complaints with the Connecticut Department of Education, and reached out to 3 news stations, not to embarrass the institution, but to illuminate the type of gradual, quiet injustice too many places still allowed to flourish in darkness. On Tuesday afternoon, while the twins remained suspended, Jerome received a call from Dr. Evelyn Hart, school board chairperson. She requested an in-person meeting. Jerome agreed, arriving that Thursday with his sons beside him, dressed in neat slacks and pressed button-down shirts, the same way he had dressed them since childhood. He had taught them that dignity didn't require volume. It simply needed to be worn with pride. The board meeting occurred in a long, oak-paneled room scented with lemon polish and aged leather. Dr. Hart presided at the table's head, surrounded by 6 other members. Most appeared serious. Several looked uncomfortable. One elderly man with thinning white hair and a Yale pin barely raised his eyes. Dr. Hart opened the discussion with calm authority. "We've examined the footage, reviewed the statements, and interviewed multiple students and faculty members. The picture we've received is disturbing, not just last week's incident, but everything leading to it." She folded her hands. "We owe your sons an apology." Jerome didn't react. "Apologies are words. We're here for action." Dr. Hart nodded. "Agreed." She addressed the rest of the board. "Effective immediately, the Reeds' suspension is lifted and expunged from their records. Mr. Harrington and his associates will face disciplinary action, including probation and community service. Furthermore, we're initiating comprehensive review of our internal policies regarding student conduct, teacher oversight, and reporting mechanisms. We have failed our own standards. That ends today." Jerome thanked them without fanfare. The twins said little, but their silence didn't stem from fear. It came from strength. They understood this wasn't the conclusion, but the beginning of a different type of struggle. When they returned the following week, something had changed. The hallways didn't feel oppressive. They felt clearer, like fog had finally dissipated. Some students smiled. Some nodded. A few still looked away, uncertain how to respond, but no one whispered. No one blocked their lockers. Cole, Sawyer, and Declan maintained distance. Their swagger had vanished. They walked like boys who had been exposed for their true nature. Not leaders or elite students, but cowards, hiding behind a system that no longer protected them. The real accountability came during parent-teacher night. The Reeds attended, moving through halls with quiet dignity. Jerome spoke calmly with educators, asked specific questions, and made clear his boys weren't alone. Across the room, Cole's parents arrived late, tight-lipped and red-faced. Mr. Harrington argued with the assistant principal about how this should have been handled privately, but it was too late for privacy. Truth, once revealed, doesn't retreat into darkness. Later that evening, outside the school gymnasium, Cole's father confronted Jerome in the parking lot, his voice sharp with bitterness, having nowhere else to go. "You think this makes you superior? Think you've accomplished something?" Jerome turned slowly, his voice low and clear. "I didn't come to win. I came to protect. That's what parents do." With that, he walked away, his sons beside him. By semester's end, a new student committee had formed. Student Voices. It included representatives from every background and provided students a platform to report injustices and be heard. Emmanuel was elected co-chair. Elijah joined the school's martial arts club as an instructor, helping train younger students in self-defense and discipline, exactly as his father had taught him. One spring afternoon, as cherry blossoms bloomed across the quad, a freshman approached, the twins as they sat beneath a tree. He appeared nervous, shifting his weight. I wanted to thank you," he said. "I witnessed what happened. I didn't speak up then. I should have. I won't stay quiet next time." Emmanuel smiled gently. "You don't owe us anything," Elijah added, "but if you ever see someone being mistreated, speak up. That's how change happens." When they crossed the graduation stage the following year, the auditorium erupted in applause. Jerome stood in the back, hands in his pockets, tears held behind proud, steady eyes. Not because his sons wore medals and honor cords, though they did, but because they had walked through fire and emerged with heads high, dignity intact. What began as a hallway confrontation became something much larger. It became a mirror held up to a school, a community, a system. It became a call to courage for those who had remained silent too long. And it became a memory carved deep into the hearts of 2 young men who learned not just how to endure, but how to rise. Because Elijah and Emmanuel Reed weren't just boys from New Haven who earned scholarships. They were the kind of young men who reminded the world that strength doesn't always announce itself, and justice, though delayed, always finds those who refuse to surrender. And Harrison West would never be the same again.